Greetings and welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. I'm your host, Bruce Morton. A renal cancer journey is extremely challenging, and our guest on this episode dealt with uncertainty, physical scars, emotional scars, and more uncertainty. But she has survived, and she's here to share her story. She is Annamarya Scaccia of Austin, Texas. And Annamarya, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Annamarya, first things first, we always like to learn more about our guests exclusive of their involvement with cancer. So if you would, tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do for work, and when time allows, what you do for fun.
Sure. So I am originally from South Brooklyn. So Brooklyn, New York. I like to say South Brooklyn because it's a very special vibe, if you will. For work, I am a communications professional, but I'm a journalist by trade. So before moving into the corporate space, I worked as a public health and social justice journalist with domestic violence, mental health, and topics around that area, sexual health, LGBTQ plus issues as my areas of expertise and coverage. And sorry, I was so focused on that. I think you asked a couple more questions within that question. So
also, when you're not working, what do you like to do for fun?
So I am also a competitive bodybuilder, so I like to lift heavy weights for fun. I'm also a photographer, a hobby photographer, a painter, and even though I do writing as a profession, I also write on the side, do a lot of creative writing.
Now let's talk about your health prior to your cancer diagnosis. What was your health like at that time?
It was really good. So a couple of years before my diagnosis, I had started to go on a new fitness journey. I've always been into sports, always been into going to the gym and being healthy, but I really had focused on getting my nutrition right, getting my exercising right, because I knew I just kind of needed a change at that point. So I was very much in excellent health before I received my diagnosis.
And when did you notice that something wasn't quite right?
That's the thing, and that's the thing about kidney cancer. You don't actually notice that something's not right. So I did have persistent back pain for a while, but I had attributed that to other conditions that I have. I also have Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, PCOS, and so lower back pain is a symptom of that. So I just attributed whatever physical pain I was feeling to that. The way I ended up finding out about the kidney cancer is because I had a doctor who cared, and she saw my levels, my creatinine levels, and she just was not happy with how that looked. And so she sent me for the ultrasound, which sent me for the MRI, which got to the diagnosis. But there was actually no preceding symptoms that made me go, oh, I need to go check my kidneys.
So what began as lower back pain led to this diagnosis of, and I hope I have this right, Chromophobe renal cell carcinoma. That is never exactly good news for anybody to learn they have cancer. So there's no such thing as a good day for it. But just how much of a shock to the system, mentally, emotionally, and otherwise, was that?
So it wasn't I want to make sure I articulate my emotions correctly, just because I know it can be a shock for people. For me, it wasn't. So in the way the process had gone, I just went for a routine wellness check. She saw my blood draw. She didn't like it. We did a couple of factors first before I went for the ultrasound. We tweaked my protein. We tweaked my exercise, because one thing about creatinine is that people who are muscular, and at that point I was quite muscular, I still am, but I was leaner and muscular, they produce more creatinine because of your muscles and the creatine. It releases more. Those aren't really necessarily technically the terms, but just athletes always have higher creatinine levels, what looks like a lower kidney function because of the way the muscles play into that. So we did that, then we did another blood draw. The levels are still high. That's where we went to the ultrasound, and that's where I found out I had a mass on my left kidney. And so between the ultrasound and the MRI, it was 2 weeks. And I think people around me were more in shock and disbelief than I was. So the minute I heard that there was a mass on my kidney, I just knew. Like in my gut, it made sense. For years, on all my blood draws, the white blood cell count would be high. And I always thought to myself that was weird. And my older doctors, my other doctors would always explain it away of, oh, you must have been sick that day. That's why they were higher. But it was always persistent. And I always asked questions about it. And I think the current doctor I have, who's amazing, took all that together and just knew too that it might be something else. But over those 2 weeks, I already resigned myself to the fact that it was cancer. You don't hear, oh, you had a mass on your kidney. Like, you have to think about the words that they choose to use. If they said in, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I have some kidney stones, but it's like on your kidney. Like, I know the way cancer works. So when I got the call, it wasn't a shock and it wasn't disbelief. It was just pain and sadness. And I hope all of that makes sense.
Sure. By the way, if you like what you hear in this segment, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast by checking the links below. Once there, you will see a bell icon. If you click on that, we will notify you when we post a new interview. Now, Annamarya, you've gotten this news, and so the next step is treatment. Did you have any options as to which way to go where treatment is concerned?
No. So that's the thing about renal cell carcinoma, particularly chromophobe renal cell carcinoma, which is a non-clear cell renal carcinoma. There are no other options other than surgery. The tumor is resistant to immunotherapy, chemotherapy, radiation. And so my only option was surgery. They had not done a biopsy beforehand because kidneys are a sensitive area. If they would have went in, they were afraid they would spread the cancer cells. So it was surgery first, and then I got the particular diagnosis. Although my urologist was very certain it was cancer. He's just like, I could tell by these and what it is and what it looks like on these scans that it is cancer. So we're going to go in and we're going to do surgery. But yeah, there was no other option for me.
Did your urologist have optimism with respect to the outcome for this procedure?
Yeah, well, yes and no, I guess. He was positive that, he can cure me, if you will. He had hoped that he could do a partial nephrectomy, which is essentially just carving out the tumor and saving most of the kidney. But when he went in and saw where the tumor was positioned, which was close to my renal veins, he had to take the whole thing out. I think overall, in regard to me going into remission and the rate of recurrence, he was very optimistic about it being low and about this being a curative approach.
Did he discuss with you a possible worst case scenario?
He did. I would say, I'm trying to remember back. He did, but he didn't go into it so extensively because I think he took into account my age, my health at that time, and the cancer itself, post-surgery, this is talking, that for him, he does not think that a worst case scenario is likely to happen, but he did discuss it with me. He did explain that when this cancer recurs, if it is to recur, it will recur in the lymph node, and I believe in the direct lymph nodes, but in the lungs too, like lung nodules can show up. It won't end up showing up in your other kidney. It shows up other places. And he took me through all of that, but he's just been very optimistic about my health. And I am in remission. There is no evidence of disease. They declare me in remission. Well, officially, I would say in October of 2021.
Was there much discussion about what life would be like with one kidney?
Yes, they did take me through some of that. I don't think that they could really prepare me for other things that has come on with that, but they did prepare me for my nutrition changing, long-term outlook, having to be really careful with my kidney function. But I don't think, unless you live without a kidney, I don't think you can really prepare someone for life with one kidney beyond saying you might have to eat less protein. You're definitely not going to have salt, or you're going to have to lower your sodium, or you got to watch out for your potassium. I don't think that they can really prepare you for the subtext of all of that. or the other like residual things, if that makes sense.
So you had a lot on your plate, both physically and emotionally, as you considered the present and the future. Were there any entities, any people or entities that served as a source of support for you during that time?
Oh, absolutely. My partner, he had been by my side throughout the whole journey, and he still continues to be by my side. My son too. My son is young. He's very young. I mean, he's going to be 7 on May 27th. But so at that time, he was 5 into 6, and he had actually been a really strong source of support too, because I'm his mama, and he wanted to make sure I was safe. And so, bringing me food in bed and making sure that I didn't move when I wanted to move, but I couldn't move. And also the people who I, work out with, who had been by my side through my fitness journey, they were also there for me. And interesting enough, I actually had my support system group post kind of the surgery, post the diagnosis. It wasn't just a few people who were there in my life already. I am, connected with so many people online who had been a strong source of support, and I've been a source of support of theirs too.
How about an organization? I had mentioned people and entities. The Kidney Cancer Association, to what degree has it been of assistance to you?
Well, I think with the Kidney Cancer Association, an organization that I love and I continue to do work with, they provided a space for me to write my story out. And so, I am, like I said, I'm a journalist by trade. I'm a communications professional. I truly believe words can change the world. I believe that you can use words to connect with others. And so it gave me a space to frame my story in a way that can also inform others who may be going through something similar or may have ideas in their head and don't know where to go to. So there's given an opportunity there. And now we're partnering a little bit more together. I'm volunteering a little bit more in terms of communications work, working on newsletters for them, finding different ways to kind of spread the word more, if you will, connecting them with other survivors for like Instagram takeovers. And so, yeah, I would say the KCA. I would also want to mention KC Cure, which is another organization, funds, kidney cancer research. One of the first things I did out of recovery was connect with a few survivors who, we formed this, I can never remember the exact name of what we called ourselves, but we're a patient panel reviewing grants, and together we were able to raise $50,000 to award a doctor, the first ever Chromophobe focused research grant, and we just awarded that earlier this year. And so I would say KC Cure, in that respect of advocacy, was also an area of support for me too.
So would you say for the person who might have just been freshly diagnosed with kidney cancer or chromophobe renal cell carcinoma, would you say there's something to be said for aligning yourself with a support group?
Yes, I think it's really important to have a support system that you can turn to. I think it gets very hard when you are trying to manage your emotions and others' emotions of people who don't understand what you're going through. And it's not to say that that group doesn't have a place, like your loved ones, your friends, they have a place. But I think at the same time, the way cancer can be, it doesn't matter what type of cancer it is, there's something to be said about turning to people who understand what you're going through. So finding that circle of support of people in similar situations who have maybe gone through the same situation and maybe on the other side of recovery, or maybe are going through it right now. Your age may not be, it may not be kidney cancer. It may be a different type of cancer, but they're in your age group, because being a young cancer survivor is a whole different experience. I was having a conversation with another survivor friend of mine, and, we've talked about being like the youngest person in the room and being assumed that you're the daughter of someone who's a cancer patient or a cancer survivor. So really just having that group of people to turn to who can sympathize and empathize and show you that compassion from a place of similarity is, I think, really, really important.
Now let's get back to your treatment. If you look back, what was the most difficult phase of that treatment? The most painful, or the most emotionally challenging? What was the toughest part of your treatment?
So the first 3 months of recovering was really, really hard. You know, you hear from others that, oh, I had my kidney taken out and after a day I was back at work. For me, that just wasn't the case. For some reason, you know, it took me longer to be able to like work and work out and to really feel 100% in my body. So I would say physically that was really, really, really hard in terms of my treatment. I think emotionally, other than, you know, having to deal with the stress of like, you know, telling my son, oh, I'm sorry, I can't eat the same thing you do, or, you know, having to figure out where I can go eat, or it being a very like stressful experience just to get food in your mouth because it's like, oh, well, this might have too much sodium. Oh, am I, you know, eating enough protein or not enough protein? What am I doing there? I'd say that was also, you know, a byproduct of treatment that's been really, really tough. I think another thing that's been tough, and this is not directly after treatment, but is a cause of treatment, is that I cannot carry a kid. And there were, I'm sorry, this one's emotional one. There were plans to expand my family. And when I brought it up to my gynecologist, she had looked at me and just said no. She said, given your age, I am 39, so they're in the realm of gynecology. Apparently, that's too old for a child. But given my age and the lack of a kidney, it would just be too high risk for me to carry a child. And while I know that families can be formed in many different ways, you know, knowing that you won't be able to have the family the way you want to, it's just been some, you know, a byproduct, a side effect, if you will, of the treatment that even a year and a half later, I'm still really trying to come to terms with.
Annamarya, no, we had talked about your friends. We talked about the Kidney Cancer Association being sources of support when you're going through the recovery process that is, for lack of a better word, more conventional in nature. But this is a very specialized area of difficulty. This news that you got that you won't be able to carry a child. Is there anyone or anything that can be of support for that very unique sort of challenge?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure. I think other survivor friends can be, right, who particularly have your type of cancer or have had it or maybe experience the same thing. I think I don't know how to answer that because I haven't found that source of support to really explain how I feel about it. Because you find those people who really want to be positive for you and want to, like, you know, reaffirm that you could build families anyway and this is not the end. But, you know, they're not listening to how you feel. So I wish I can answer that with something positive, saying that, yeah, there are all these groups out there, but I haven't found one that kind of meets my need yet.
Annamarya, could you say that, and not that this is a competition by any stretch, but if you were to quantify the scarring, if you will, from this overall experience, when you look at it through a wide-angle lens, in a sense, are the emotional scars from your cancer journey tougher than the physical scars?
Absolutely. I think that so one thing that I've experienced, and my survivor friends who are also chromophobe renal cell carcinoma survivors have experienced, is this idea that we're fine, or being told that we're fine, because we do not bear the physical symbolism of cancer. You know, none of us have lost our hair. None of us have had to go through years of chemo. And it is not a competition. And that's the thing, it's not a competition. But we are constantly told that we're fine because you can't see some of the physical things that we go through. Sometimes I still feel a bit of pain at my incision sites because of like the scar tissue. You know, there is that can kind of be tough. But the emotional part of it is a lot tougher on top, you know, so it ends up becoming even tougher when on top of that, you're receiving this message of, oh, you're fine, just be happy you're alive. And so you end up, at least for me, you end up feeling this kind of survivor's guilt. Like, why did I get to walk away with just losing a kidney? Which, by the way, losing a major organ is a very, very big deal. You know, telling someone that you should be glad you have two kidneys is not very helpful, because the minute your remaining kidney goes down, you're on dialysis and your life is shortened exponentially. So yeah, getting all of those messages on the outside just makes the journey a lot tougher emotionally.
Our guest is Annamarya Scaccia of Austin, Texas, and we're hearing about her journey with renal cancer. So we've talked about emotional scars, but make no mistake, Annamarya, there are physical scars that come with your procedure.
Yes.
For our podcast listeners, they can't see this. So if you would just describe what the scars are like at the incision site.
Sure. So there are two ways. There are probably multiple, but you know, you can have an open or you can have a robotic surgery. I had a robotic surgery. So I have five incisions on my left side, one starting above my belly button into my belly button, and then three, I would say, in my pelvic region on my left side, and then one or two underneath I would say, underneath my rib and near my rib. So I think it's actually, I would have to lift my shirt and double check, but I know that I have that one long scar, a couple on my pelvis, and, you know, one under my rib, a couple under my rib. And so that's how they went in. And, you know, they've healed, but they're still there. And what stood out to me the most, and something I'm still, you know, trying to tighten up, is the way that they closed me, because they had to balloon me out, right? You know, even if you're doing an open, you have to be ballooned out in order to do the surgery. They closed me when I was ballooned out. So when I healed and, you know, everything deflated, if you will, I now have a lot of extra skin in the middle of my abdomen, because I had lost a lot of weight over the years and I've had that extra skin anyway. And so now it's like even more like kind of collected in these, like, I would say, drapes, like these really like crushed velvet drapes in like an Art Deco building, if you will. That's kind of how the skin now hangs. And so if you're someone who has that extra skin, there's a chance that that's what, you know, your scars look like now. It's not just that one incision, but like all that gathering at that one spot. You know, and I know people who've had open surgery, and they had like that one kind of like swooping scar on whatever side that they had the kidney removed, that, you know, stays, and it takes a while to heal. You know, stays red for a bit, probably a bit longer for open. For me, it stayed red for a few months, but it's pretty much skin toned, if you will.
Exclusive of the scarring, is there any residual pain even now from the procedure?
Yeah, so sometimes, which is interesting, so sometimes I'll just feel pain on my left side, where, like, you know, pain on my left side, kind of right above my hip. I'll feel some pain and tightness and tenseness, because it's still not 100%. It can't 100% do what it used to do before. It's not as flexible as it was. I have to still build up that strength. So there is a little bit more tightness there that I'll feel, or even internally, you know, when I bloat up, I can feel the difference in how I bloat from, you know, food or, you know, carbonated beverages. Although I don't drink soda, something, you know, sparkling water or whatnot. The way I bloat up is different now, and I kind of feel this hollowness in the side. In terms of the scars themselves, just the middle one, I can sometimes feel the pain there, and it's probably because of scar tissue that hasn't really broken up. And so I have to do more of that work of massaging out to kind of break it apart. But I will, even a year and a half later, will still feel pain in that area, right in the middle of my, right in the middle of my abdomen, right at the scar, right above my, I would say it's about 3 inches long, the scar there. That's the biggest one. I'll still feel some pain.
You had mentioned being a bodybuilder. Can you still engage in that without competing, or can you still engage in bodybuilding in a competitive way?
Absolutely. I didn't become a competitive bodybuilder until after my diagnosis. Before that, I was a kickboxer, and I love kickboxing. I still love kickboxing. I have a tattoo on my left side, my left inner forearm, of a traditional American tattoo of a woman, woman holding boxing gloves. And so that was my heart, and that's what I was doing beforehand. But as I got back into it, I realized I couldn't do it really anymore. When I would spar with people, I sparred with this one person, and I got, she was going after my right side after I told her not to, or like said, please don't. And it was just a sparring match. And I realized in that moment, I'm like, even in sparring, I can't protect my right side. I'm never going to be able to be a competitive, like I can never compete in kickboxing, Muay Thai, or anything like that. And so I always loved lifting weights too, but it was kind of like always secondary for me because I have 2 herniated discs in my neck. So, doing any, above the shoulder movements were always so hard for me. And so I used kickboxing to build up that strength in a different way. But I started with that strength, I started lifting more weights, and I just realized I really wanted to be on stage and prove that you could break the, like you could shatter the status quo as a bodybuilder. Like you don't have to have, I would love to have both of my kidneys, don't get me wrong, but like you don't have to have that. You don't have to have, 1 gram of protein per 1 pound of body weight, or even more than that to build the muscles. It takes longer. True, and it will, I'm not as big, or I'm not as big as my competitors who in natural bodybuilding, but I wanted to prove that you can do it even if you're having just 0.7 or 0.5 grams of protein per body weight pound. And so it has not stopped me. And I've connected with so many people who have who not only had kidney cancer, but just kidney issues in general, maybe not cancer related, just kidney issues in general, who reach out to me like, I'm so inspired by your story. Can you help me figure this out? Because I don't know what to do. What are these things that I have to think about? How long will these results come? And I share that information. And I love to share more of it. I'd love to coach, people who have kidney issues and really learn, teach them that don't let that limit you in pursuing a career in bodybuilding. And so, so I became a bodybuilder right after, like 6 months after my surgery and diagnosis. I reached out to a friend who was like, you're going to be my coach. You're going to prep me, and we're going to step on stage. And I stepped on stage for the first time in November of 2021, and I'm going to step on stage this year again.
You had mentioned the word inspiration in your last answer just now, and I want to bring up a subject that you've already addressed in part that is a source of inspiration, and that's your son and his bringing meals to you when you were recovering. But what about his recovery? This, I'm sure, has been a difficult time for him as you are recovering from your procedure. Is he emotionally recovering?
Are you just trying to make me cry today?
Sorry.
No. I crack jokes when I'm uncomfortable. No, it was hard for him. It was really hard for him. And I did write about it for the Kidney Cancer Association, just watching him, deal with my recovery, I would say for the first year, he was so afraid of me dying. He's young, he's 6. It doesn't matter what I can explain to him. He still doesn't understand. What he understands is cancer is bad and my mom could have died. And so for him, for a really long time, anytime I left the room, he would just freak out. He would start, there was this one day that I will never forget, but I was using the restroom and I just hear him like this almost blood curdling scream of mom, and just over and over again, just screaming, mom, mama, ma. And, I kept yelling, hey, I'm in the bathroom, and he didn't hear me. All he did was screaming and looking for me. And then when he found me, he was like, oh, okay, you're okay. But it was all because I wasn't in the room, and he was just afraid. He was afraid of losing me. And I think still to this day, he understands that mama's okay, but there's still this part of him that's afraid of losing me. And, if I'm not in the room, there have been times where he still be like, mama, where are you? Or now, he's kind of always following me around, but since that day, like since the diagnosis and the surgery and just seeing me, he follows me around a little bit more than he did before. So he's taking it a day at a time. He's, again, not afraid that I'm going to die anymore, or that like I've died if I'm not in the room, but it's something that still scares him.
Is it fair to say that in some form or fashion, you lift him up and he lifts you up?
Absolutely. He's my buddy. Like that's what I call him. He's my little buddy. And I would agree that we do lift each other up. He makes me feel better in those moments where I feel like I failed him. So the other day, we had gone to Legoland recently, and we went to a place to eat, and he really wanted to share nachos with me, and I just couldn't do it because it wasn't just that the calories were too high. It's just that with the amount of calories, even splitting it, the sodium would just be too much for me, and the protein would just be too much. And I felt really, really bad, and I started crying. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I can't give you this. And he just looked at me and was like, it's okay, mama. You don't have to cry. It's okay. And he'll always reassure me when I always feel bad. Really, it's just around food, right? That I can't partake with him. He'll be like, it's okay, mama. I know you can't do this because of that. That's fine. He reassures me. And then in those moments where he feels like he gets that anxiety that I might not be around, or something bad might happen to me, or something bad did happen to me. Anytime I go to the doctor, now he gets a little bit frightened. I reassure him, like, mama's okay. It's fine. Anything that happens, we'll get through together. And I really take the time to explain things to him, because I do believe kids understand more than we give them credit for, even if they understand it a different way, right? So, like, again, I know I said, for him, what he understood was cancer is bad and mom could die. And that's what he can understand, and the simplistic form about cancer. But I still explain to him what it means so he could kind of ease those anxieties.
At the very beginning, I had trotted out the operative word uncertainty. And there was uncertainty that you went through en route to the procedure and what immediately followed. But even today, with one kidney, to some degree, does uncertainty dog you?
Absolutely. Even with my being declared no evidence of disease and being in remission, you still have that in the back of your head of, well, is it going to come back? Did they really get everything? And just sitting there waiting for your next scan. Now I'm still on active surveillance for at this point 4 years, and it's been just pushed to 1 year. Some are 6 months. I'm a year. I'm grateful for that, but I'm not going to lie and say I have not thought about it, and thought about, well, what's going to show up in a year, or if I feel a certain pain, or if something happens, or my this might be TMI, but if my pee is a certain color or a certain thing, that it's, that first thought of, oh my God, is my cancer back? So I think uncertainty will always be there. It may get less over time. The longer you stay healthy, the longer that you're in remission, it gets better, really. But there are people who've been in remission for 6 years where it's recurred. There are people who've been in remission 20 years and it's recurred. And so I think with the way cancer is, as a matter of type of cancer, that uncertainty will always just be behind you, watching you, waiting for you, just like following you like a shadow, if you will.
Annamarya, we're going to wrap things up now, and we always try to conclude with sort of the same question, and that is that if today, tomorrow, next week, you ran into somebody who had been freshly diagnosed with Chromophobe renal cell carcinoma, and you had a chance to have a private audience with them, if there was a message that you had for them, it might include many facets, that message, but if there's one thing that stands out above all others, what would you say to that person who's been freshly diagnosed?
It's okay for you to feel the way you feel. I had mentioned earlier the idea of managing other people's emotions, and it's something that I talk a lot about to my friends publicly and, in pieces, where you almost feel guilty for having cancer because of the pain it's causing other people to see you in pain. And you can, compartmentalize or suppress your own emotions and how you feel. And there may be that logical part of you that says, yes, I'm fine. All they have to do is remove my kidney. There's no evidence of disease. There's good. And that logical part still stands. But you're going to feel a certain way emotionally. You're going to have a certain reaction emotionally. And it's okay. You do not have to suppress that. You do not have to make other people feel better for the way you feel. You can express that. You're allowed to feel that. Even if you don't want to express it to people, because some people are private, it's still okay that you feel that way. It's still okay for you to be upset, because the fact is cancer is cancer. It doesn't matter what type of cancer it is. It's still something that you will always have a part of you. My older sister put it this way. She's also a cancer survivor. She's like, it's a club no one ever wants to be a part of and can never leave. And that you'll always carry weight on you. And it's okay, even if it's 5 years from now, you're in remission, you think about it. It's okay for you to feel the way you feel.
Our guest has been Annamarya Scaccia of Austin, Texas. Annamarya, thank you so much for sharing your story, one with a lot of peaks and valleys. And I certainly hope going forward that it's all just peaks and no valleys, if it could possibly be that way. Annamarya, thanks so much for your time. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me. This has been great. I hope I can inspire others to just talk and be honest about how they feel and just get that support that they need.
Thank you so much, Annamarya. Thanks again. And we want to remind you that as you go through a cancer journey, you are not alone. There are plenty of people out there just like Annamarya with wisdom and support that can aid your cancer journey. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at cancerinterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews Podcast.